Good evening, and welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. So let's get started with another interesting and different examination of the world as just maybe we don't know it. Unexpectedly, I do like the name, welcome. Diditsa and Wiley Wiener. Welcome, 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 welcome. And Falak Musa. Good to have you guys here. We're just going to let a few more people join before we start the main thing, but I'm very glad that you have swung by. I do hope that you like examining the weird and the wonderful that is out there, and that you'll stick around and see what's about. Pukavain, hey there. I hope you're in fine and fabulous form. So, as we get ready to begin, I remind you, such as it is and that it matters, that on this channel we look at strange things around the world, be they supernatural, paranormal, or just plain weird. And we do it entirely for our own curiosity and personal satisfaction. We do not necessarily support nor deride any of the things that we examine. We merely look at different things and look at the viewpoints and chat about them and see whether or not we think there might be truth to it or none whatsoever, as suits ourselves. So, with that said, we have only got a single rule on this channel, and that rule is don't be rude, because if you are, I will give you the boot. We don't allow that kind of rudeness at all. You can agree, you can disagree, you can share your opinion, but the moment you are rude about it or disruptive to everybody else's enjoyment, that's when I ban you. Just so as you know. But with all of that, hello to you all. Dante, glad you came back. Good to see you there. Welcome to Sivoking. All of you people that are joining in, I am very glad to see that you're here. Wawa, welcome. I do encourage you all to like, share, subscribe, join the fan club, do all of the fun things that support the channel and might give us something to begin. Tristan, thank you so much for the likes. I am going to tell you that if you can't always sit through a live at this time, I've started to upload the earlier Strange Bones lives, which I've saved all of, onto my YouTube channel and will in due course, once I've got it properly set up, put the link from there to here so that you guys can go and check out any if you feel so moved, or if you don't feel moved, then you don't have to. But so that you know. Bonbon, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for that kindness. So, as we progress, we are talking about archaeology and architecture. We've been going around the world, and I do remind you that while we always enjoy it when things turn out to be supernatural and paranormal, they don't have to be. As long as they are suitably weird and wonderful, we are quite happy to check them out and see what we can find. Though, of course, as you know, I have a terrible fascination for shapeshifters, and as a result, anything that leads to the possible proof of that always makes me happy. Tristan, no, I don't. I'm sorry if that's upsetting. I am what they would call agnostic. I do not believe in standard religious structures at all. But that's just me. I have a lot of people on this channel that range from the atheist to the agnostic to the Christian to the Muslim to the Hindu. So I have all sorts of people, and I do believe that it is necessary to be respectful to everybody and their faith, or lack thereof, as suits. But if you do become overly insistent and spoil things for everybody else by making it all about religion, which it is not necessarily about, then I'm afraid that will become a problem. But yes, asking the question is absolutely fine, Tristan. Nothing personal, of course. It is a fair question. I was Christian. I was Catholic, in fact. I was, in fact, a monk in the Catholic Church for 9 years. Um, and I do not mind admitting that. I left formalized religion. I want to give a very special welcome to Endless Thoughts, my very, very good friend. Super happy that you have joined us again. If you wish to join the live, you are super welcome to at any point. I am careful, just so as you know, who I allow to join a live, simply because I do kind of need to know who you are a little bit, because we've had some real trolls that have spoilt things, and it's usually kids that shouldn't be allowed up late anyway. Massive thanks to Endless Thoughts for the heart. We are always glad of the support, and she is massively generous. So, Butsar asked, am I psychic? You know, that's a very hard question to answer because what would it mean? So, you see, the term psychic is one of those terrible, terrible words that does mean certain things but doesn't mean others, if you know what I'm saying. So, yes, I do see ghosts and have done all my life, ever since I was very small. I'm sensitive to certain things and not others, which makes me think that the term psychic is a very, very general term. I think different people have different sensitivities for different reasons. And Tristan wants to become a pastor. I can tell you that if you do it properly, it's very hard work, but it is very rewarding. But it does take quite a bit of dedication. How did I develop? Well, that's an interesting point in both parts of your comment. How did I develop it? I didn't really start until I was a fair bit older. Initially, of course, I didn't like it at all because when I was very small, it was terrifying. Once I got older, I started developing it mostly because I thought it would give me control over it, which it did eventually. You say you used to see them, but you closed your chakras. Now, that's a very interesting comment because, in a way, you were right to do it if it's something you don't want to be involved with. But there are downsides to doing something like that as well. And I suppose the best solution, but not the easiest by any chance, would be to learn to both close and open them at will, whereupon you could manage the thing. It's kind of complicated. And the reason it's complicated is because the tradition that I follow doesn't use chakras. And chakras, by and large, are a very, very in-depth and complicated system. It's a very, very good one, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's very difficult to truly understand and explain how they work if you're not really quite knowledgeable about it. And when it comes specifically to chakras, I'm not an expert. I learnt things in the old Anglo-Saxon tradition, which speaks of shield skins, which is very, very different. So there is that. So I hope that both Tristan and Butsar, I've given you at least a little bit of an answer there. And no, I don't think you need be scared in any manner or form. What can I tell you about you? Do I have that kind of power? No. The ability to know things about people is quite different, and it's one of the other forms of divination. There's quite a lot of types of knowing: clairsentience, clairaudience. I forget all the clairs. There's a whole crapload of them, as well as true divination of knowing either the past or the future, or of other places. So, yeah, it's a matter of different kinds of things. And for me, no, not particularly. It is what it is. As I say, I mostly learnt what I learnt in order to be able to sleep well at night. Telekinesis, no, but I did find a very interesting study that was done that supposedly shows you how, if you have the talent, you can develop it. And one day when I'm not working on other things, I might give that a bash, because I wouldn't mind that. Most of my stuff, by and large, has to do with seeing what is there. It's a skill that generally I refer to, for want of a better word, as true sight. I see what is, not necessarily what appears to be, which is quite different, which includes seeing things that are there, such as ghosts, which, as you can imagine, can be quite annoying and upsetting at times. Particularly as that's my strongest ability, and where I came and found out, as it were. So, yeah, there is that. Well, there you go. That's pretty cool. But certainly a talent I wouldn't mind learning. I've always thought it would be cool to be able to do that, but alas, I've never managed. But as we begin, we're looking at archaeology and architecture, and our choice of place at the moment is North America. Why things are as they are, and what it might tell us. And we need to well, maybe you're part Jinn, Butsa. Check it out. Go look up Jinn, Jinn, on Google, and it might tell you a few things. Because apparently that's a connection of theirs. So, North America, we need to understand that the overriding understanding of how history went is that initially North America had no people, as most places around the world didn't, because the common belief is human beings started off in one place. Ja, ek kan Afrikaans praat. Ek is uit Suid-Afrika. Though I probably have an awful accent, and I apologize to all of those Afrikaners out there that think I sound like a Rooinek. But so, according to standard, which I personally don't ascribe to actually for various reasons, but all humanity began somewhere in the middle of Africa and then spread out around the world, and different human groups got to different places at different times, which is kind of the point. Now, Clovis culture, just to give us our background, were the first people to arrive in North America. That, according to the official theory, okay, and they sort of kicked into the area around 13,000 years ago, possibly more. Um, they are called the Clovis culture because it seems that these peoples settled near Clovis, New Mexico, where stone tools have been found, and it's probably the oldest found official site, if that makes sense. Um, there are arguments with this, but basically, it includes a number of arrowhead stone carvings and such, which have a distinctive uh, size and shape. They're unlike most arrowheads; these are about 10 centimeters long. So the points were multifunctional, not used to only work on arrows, but for other things as well. Um, so they found a number of different artifacts and what have you, and basically, Clovis peoples were thought to have been highly mobile groups of hunter gatherers, and these were the first peoples um, in North America that hunted the megafauna, and particularly mammoths for some reason, but also mastodons, gomphothares, and bison and horse, and so on. Um, and they may have contributed um, to certain extinctions of megafauna in North America. Hard to say, but that's basically who the Clovis culture are. And it's important before we get into everything as they get referenced. So remember the date, remember the name. You have a question, John. Ask your question. Okay, so if your dreams feel real while you're in them, how do you know this isn't one? That is actually a question that we did start discussing at length in one of our previous lives. Endless Thoughts, I believe you started that conversation off. It is a good point, and one of the views of reality is that it is just a dream, and we are all dreamers. Very Matrix-esque in that regard. Um, Huge thanks for sharing the live. Um, but yes,
Hello.
hello there. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. What can I do for you, sir?
Do you have any stories to tell?
I always have stories to tell, and you know that very, very well. Are you
Oh, tell me
in,
one.
intrigued in archaeology?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So essentially, okay, so John says death is like an alarm clock when we wake up to our true nature. Well, I've got to be honest with you. I've never been dead, so I can't answer that, to be really honest. I don't know. What do you think? Is death really when we come alive or wake up?
Yeah.
You think that might be true?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think at the end of the day, how do you know if a dream feels real or not? It's one of those difficult things. I suspect that dreams aren't real when they contain things that don't follow logically in certain ways. On the other hand, one viewpoint is that we are all okay. You caused trouble in many other lives, and I was very generous because I do recognize your picture. Goodbye.
No.
Sorry. That's happened way too often. I have zero tolerance. So he is now blocked. And I did warn because I know his picture. He's one of the ones of the group that likes to troll this place. And they start nicely and then go south. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Um, so, some would say that we are merely elements in the dream of God. And as such, we are just a dream, and that there is that aspect. The idea that we are eternal and it's only the body that dies is a very interesting thing. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. This is true. We might be a transition. It's certainly a viewpoint. The difficulty with a statement like that, and I suppose with any statement in any religion, by and large as well, is how do you prove it? That's kind of the difficulty. It makes it hard in that way. It makes it very difficult to trying to make a case for something of which you're relying on theoretical argument at best. We haven't got anybody that died and came back and said, oh, yes, this is what it was like, and really it's this. At the end of the day, the only the only sort of person that we know of in theory that has ever met God was Moses, or by extension, I suppose, if you believe in all of that, Jesus, because who else actually met God and can say, well, God's this guy and he's like this? Thank you, NRL Forfeit. I do appreciate that. I did briefly see a pop-up which I didn't get to click on. Were you requesting to join the live? But John, yes, the quantum physics tries to prove it. That is true. But some things can't be proven. And that is, I suppose... Hi there. How are you?
Okay.
Good, good, good. So here's the thing. When it
Nah,
comes...
fuck up, bitch. Go kill yourself, you ugly grandpa. Fuck you, little cunt. Kill yourself, cunt.
I am sure your parents are very proud of you.
Strange boner, fuck up, cunt. Kill yourself.
So there you go. Once again, NRL forfeit, another one to be banned. People who say things like that will be reported. Just so that you know, I do report all of these people so that their accounts do get blocked entirely. I make a point of it because, quite frankly, they are not suitable people to be on things like TikTok. So, yeah, I do go and put their accounts entirely on warning. And I believe that it's the only responsible thing to do, because while I don't really particularly care, I do suspect that it's quite possible that they might say something to somebody that is just not right. That may lead to something bad. And I just think it's wrong, if that makes sense. So forgive me if that's... So yes, the accounts will get reported to TikTok as hate speech, and as a result, um, are blocked entirely from my account. Um, and they will be flagged via the algorithms as people using hateful things, and all linked accounts will go the same way. It's wrong. Sorry, we're here to just chat and have fun and find interesting things and have conversations like this. And thank you, Endless Thoughts. I appreciate that as well. You know, there's no need to be that stupid. But as we were saying, so we've pointed out about 13,000 years ago, Clovis culture. Now, why is this important? Because there are a number of discoveries which, while they are not paranormal or supernatural, they do argue with things. No, it isn't, but his main account I already blocked and reported from the last one. This isn't the first time that he's tried this, and his friends. You can hear them in the background sitting around the computer and trying their luck at spamming at people. So, yeah, I think there's been about 8 or 9 accounts I've had to block and report for things said, which really is unpleasant. But what it is what it is. And that's why I'm so careful who I let on the live. Um, do I believe in ghosts? Well, yes, I can see them. But if you were to ask me if I know what they are, I have an opinion, but I'm not sure. Hey, Sean. So we're going to begin with some of the oldest things that have been found that make really no particular sense in that regard, which flies in the face of and no. I'm sorry, Sean. Sloan, is it? I can't read your name there so easily. I do know you know the other guys. Um, I'm not allowing unknowns onto the live. Sion, yes. Um, so, yeah, tonight we've had in the first, 20 minutes, already 4 people try to make a mess of the live. So, unless I specifically know who you are, not tonight, I'm afraid, in that regard. I do apologize. So we're going to start with the white sand footprints. Now, the reason we say 13,000 years ago Clovis culture is because the white sand footprints date back probably around 23,000 years. Yes, it is. So 23,000 years is 10,000 years more than we think that people got to North America, which is very, very interesting. How can you tell how? Well, no, look, I think that the people are real people in this regard. Um, I just think they happen to be nasty people and rather foolish. As the legalities are getting stricter and stricter around this kind of thing on social media, and very, very likely will result in fines at the very least. So, yes, I do go and block them. That's a cunning trick, Endless Thoughts. A very cunning trick indeed. I'm quite impressed with that. That is impressive. Thank you for that. I am impressed. You learn something new every day. Technology can be amazing and sometimes slightly terrifying. So 10,000 years before general archaeology thinks people got to North America, there's evidence of people in North America. So that throws things out quite a bit. Then, of course, we have another thing which, sorry, brother, I'm going with endless thoughts on this one. I do apologize. It was only recently discovered because this particular stone circle in North America is actually submerged now under Lake Michigan. And it has all kinds of interesting carvings on the rocks, which we shall see what we can do about that. You can type up your comment. I will read it to everybody. So ask your question. You are welcome. But as I said, unless you're a guaranteed known person that has followed the account for a while, which you haven't, I'm not allowing any more tonight. I have a personal limit to how many attempts of rudeness I let on a single live. And I do apologize for that. So that's a no. With zero followers and only 23 people that you follow, I cannot do that. I do apologize. We are also going to talk about the Blythe intaglios. These are enormous desert geoglyphs in California, so large that they were actually hidden until people actually got aeroplanes, and they were spotted in the 1930s. So that's a fascinating thing. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about in that regard, they are going to be something similar to the Nazca lines, which again are giant things that you can barely figure out what they are from Earth. But if you have an aeroplane, you suddenly see that they are actually pictures. The next interesting thing is, again, a temporal anomaly. We're only supposed to have got anybody in North America 13,000 years ago, but Cactus Hill has human habitation 18,000 years ago, which again is very interesting. And then a relatively new one in the Rocky Mountains, which is a 10,000-year-old site, which is very interesting. Now, the standard view archaeologically is that we got to North America over the top by crossing over a land bridge which is now gone. There's a whole geological explanation to that, yada, yada, yada. But essentially, that's the Solutrean hypothesis. No, that's the opposition to the Solutrean hypothesis. I do apologize. But the Solutrean hypothesis says that maybe people got there by traveling across the Atlantic by some kind of boat. Which is a very different viewpoint because it was not believed that people had boats then. We also need to discuss the Kennewick Man and who on earth this might be. And it actually led to serious legal battles discussing it, which is interesting. There is evidence that might suggest that the people that lived in California had contact with the Polynesians, which is another interesting thing. Then you have the Ceruti Mastodon site that appears to have been scavenged by early humans, but shows that people were around a lot longer ago than we think, which makes the archaeology, at least, very, very interesting. And we shall go along with those, but then we also need to have a look at the architecture, which of course we can do. Guess who's back? Back again. Whose new account is reported as well. Unfortunately, they are desperate to really disrupt the enjoyment for everybody. Alas, I do apologize yet again. It seems that we are having a wonderful evening of it. And for some reason, they've decided that I am to be a target. And there's not a lot we can do about it, alas. But nevertheless, we move along. So, as we begin, we are first going to have a brief examination of the archaeology, which includes the underwater stone circle with mysterious carvings. So, Lake Michigan is a pretty large and pretty deep lake. Not the necessarily easiest to get into by and large, but I suppose in many ways, why would you? I don't know much about it as a lake. I don't know if it's a popular diving site in that regard. If I am wrong, then I would suggest explaining to me why I'm wrong, because I've been wrong many times and I think it's very possible. But for whatever reason, your lads went diving, whoever they were, and they indeed did find something. And I am going to throw a picture up right now for you to have a quick peek at. It is behind me. They found that. Now, if you were to say, hey, that looks a bit like Stonehenge, the answer is yes, it does. And what makes it very interesting as well is not only that it looks a lot like Stonehenge, it is 9,000 years old, at least, making it older than Stonehenge. It was discovered by divers and researchers, and it features deliberately placed rocks with carvings including mastodons, giant deer, megaloceros. I don't even know what that is. Apparently a giant deer type thing. And a cobra, which is weird because that's not a snake that is native to North America at all. Did early humans possess forgotten knowledge? Did it hint at global connections? Was it a spiritual site, a place of ritual, something stranger? Nobody really knows. All we do know is that the carvings are pretty distinct and they're very nice. And there it is on the bottom of the lake. And nobody really quite understands how it was built or who built it. One has always assumed that very early Clovis culture, while it did arrive or they think, at least 13,000 years ago, they would have been very busy surviving. So by the time you could have gotten to a point where people would start building things like this, you would expect them to have become settled, not be hunter-gatherers or move around in that regard. which therefore implies that at least 9,000 years ago, people were organized enough and settled enough to make these kinds of monuments. Now, there are varying thoughts on this, and one of them, which I find the most interesting, is what if our understanding of the timelines are wrong? We do know that originally it's generally accepted, and it seems reasonable, that originally the continents were one landmass and they separated out. But there's no evidence that there weren't others that were lost by sinking underwater, even though not all scientists agree. There is a possibility that there was more connection than we think there was prior to. Certainly, if cultures were limited enough that they were old sufficiently that we're talking only wood, leather, and stone type tools, thousands of years under salt water would destroy it pretty much entirely. And finding even the stones that remain virtually impossible. So it's not an unreasonable theory, and there is that side. Apparently, they say that this is supposed to be in around 950 feet of water, so very deep now. But we know that what with tectonic movement, and let's face it, one thing America does get quite a bit of is earthquakes, given where they geologically are. Things do rise and fall, if not in massive, dramatic ways, sometimes slower. So we know that there are places that are underwater now that weren't back when, and so on and so forth. So there are definitely things that could be changes, but it does raise a number of questions. Number one is, what else is hiding under things like the Great Lakes or under the ocean that we simply do not know about? The second problem, in many ways, is geographically, we say that all continents were one landmass. Sometimes I agree with that entirely. Sometimes I totally disagree with that. It's kind of difficult in a lot of ways to be sure. I know that the continents do kind of all fit together, but still at the same time, you wonder. We've found so many strange things, you start kind of wondering what's going on. And of course, again, we're talking about a circle of raised pillars that at one point at least there were lintels across, just like Stonehenge. And the inevitable question arises, of course, is that like an alien flying saucer landing pod? I mean, right there, there's reason enough to wonder. I mean, I'm not saying it is, but come on. When you see them all being kind of the same thing, you wonder. We do wonder that how did they get a cobra carving where you get no cobras? We know that amongst other things, there's also a monkey carving on the opposite side of the whole thing when there are no monkeys. So again, you start saying, did people come from somewhere knowing this? Are there things that we don't know? Did people actually have contact and move around a lot more? A very interesting point was brought up, in fact, And now here's a thought for you, okay? Touching on a current subject of whinginess, global warming. The real honest truth is that while it might be inconvenient and while it might be happening a little bit faster due to blah, 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 due to human interference, global warming is natural. It has happened before, and the planet got hotter and more water rose, and you ended up with bigger oceans. And then we had an ice age, and the waters receded, and a lot of the water was sort of stored in the ice caps. And then the planet got hotter again, and what happened is we ended up now with lots of ocean and quite a lot of land, and it's still melting, but it will reverse. And when it reverses, we'll have a lot more land and a lot bigger ice on the ice caps and a lot less ocean. Does this mean that we are likely to see cycles in action, and the remaining surviving humans, whoever they might be, will return to a hunter-gatherer state as they try to survive and carry on, and then repopulate the earth, and then it starts all over again, and we see an entire cycle going again and again and again. And our strange stories and mythologies of ancient cities with great technology are not myth, but memories of before the last great ice age. Scary stuff indeed, endless thoughts. So much history is lost, and that we don't know. But what's scary about that as a theory is the fact that if you think about it, it's not that illogical. And if all sorts of people were wiped out and only a few thousand survived after the next ice age, if there was that much ice and so little water, you could probably walk to other continents eventually. Maybe entire civilizations that we don't know about are lurking under the ocean somewhere. Well, there you go. 100,000 years to adapt to ice, to adapt to more land, to deal with the cold, to build civilizations in places that previously were underwater, that when they all start melting again, you're then forced back to the continents as we know them now, and civilization starts all over again. Like we have a cycle of ice age with ice age civilizations, warm age with warm age civilization, ice age with a new ice age civilization, so on and so on and so on. You start to wonder, don't you? It's something we don't have an answer to. How do we know such things? Maybe what we think of as archaeology is not archaeology, but the remnants. That would be scary, would it not? Nevertheless, just the idea of global warming is the Earth giving itself a shake and removing the extra fleas before allowing it to carry on. Yeah. There are things hidden in history. We know that a lot of what is believed about dinosaurs by scientists isn't quite right. We know that there are varied other peoples, maybe, that could exist or could have existed. Um, there's a lot of thoughts, and there's a lot of stories um, that seem to imply we have some kind of a memory when this did happen. We know that the flood theory exists in multiple cultures, not just in the Bible. Um, so, an interesting point somebody made, I've just spotted on here, was that the person that did the carving of the elephant on the stones did an elephant, not a mammoth. And elephants have never existed in North America, just like cobras and monkeys. That's a very, very good point. Uh, Now, one viewpoint is that we are all from Africa. We entered America through the Bering Strait. Um, the idea that people moved around the world from an original, they say that the majority of Americans, I don't know if this is true, I would be very interested to know if it was true, um, but most Americans are blood type O because of the limited genetic origins in the original colonization. It seems to stick. Is this true? Um, of course, there's a lot of argument because some people say that uh, maybe there is truth to it. I don't know. I find it a little worrying, though, that we have so much that we can't answer. Placeholder, hello. What do you know about archaeology in America? That's what we're talking about today. Welcome. Now, we do have another interesting set of things to talk about. Um, Imagine, if you will, and tell me where I am, okay? It's a stone wall stretching for miles and miles with pictures scratched onto the ground, centuries and centuries old. This particular place is where? And of course, you would think, well, maybe the Great Wall of China, but no. Um, That there were no boats to reach America makes no sense. That's an argument that quite a lot of people do point out. And it seems that in many ways we've been quite hard on our ancestors, accusing them of basically being little more than monkeys with no technology at all. And it seems that this is quite wrong. It seems our ancestors were a lot more cunning than you might think and had a lot more skills than you might think. So if I told you there was a stone circle, uh, if I told you that you're talking about America again, you would probably be a little bit surprised because everywhere else has these things. Why would they be in America? So let's talk about Mystery Hill in Salem, New Hampshire. Yes, the same Salem where the witch trials were. So this is sometimes referred to as America's Stonehenge. Mystery Hill doesn't look like the English stone circle. It's a complex of stone structures and artificial caves, probably from the 17th century, though exact dating might not be possible, as they suffered from tampering at the hands of a 1930s landowner who was convinced that they were the remains of a 7th century monastic Irish colony. No. So convinced, in fact, that if they didn't match his theory, he fixed them and therefore buggered up the site a little bit. But what it is a popular place. And in fact, even H.P. Lovecraft himself visited the site for inspiration. And yes, The X-Files set one episode nearby, which is very, very interesting. We do not, however, know for sure what it was, but it's very, very interesting. And there is a large stone table and more. And one wonders if perhaps, rather than a monastic site, this might have been a place for a gathering of witches. It's certainly creepy enough. The next interesting place to talk about are the Casa Grande ruins. They are, of course, in Arizona, which, as you know, is very dry. It was constructed in the early 13th century, that the builders used adobe, and that the full complex included several other structures and a ball court, and was once surrounded by a wall. What they don't know is what the four-story central building was for. It could have been a guard tower, a grand silo, a house of worship, something else. It was abandoned nearly half a century before Columbus arrived to the Americas, and long after the local Hopi Indians had moved away. It was too ruined for early Spanish explorers to do their own investigating into what it was. So basically, you've got this building that wouldn't have been built by the Hopi, was built after then, but before Europeans arrived, and right there, still confusion. The Trilithon stones, 1,000 tons. That's a good point. Henna, hey, welcome. Hola. ¿Cómo está? So let's quickly bring up my notes on the Trilithon stones, seeing as we did promise we would mention them. So, what are the Trilithon stones? Well, in short, for those of you who don't know, they are massive stones that form structures with two uprights and a lintel. So think in terms again of Stonehenge type stones. Two uprights, crosspiece over the top, like that. Okay? Also referring to the three giant horizontally laid stones on the Temple of Jupiter platform at Baalbek in Lebanon. The Baalbek Trilithon stones are among the largest ever used in ancient construction, weighing between 800 to 1,000 tons. Their immense size and the methods used to quarry, transport, and lift them continue to be a subject of historical and archaeological interest, which basically you can translate into the idea of Jared, Henna's friend, he invited me. That's cool. Welcome. They have no freaking clue. They do not know at all how this was built, who built it, and what on earth did they use to build it. Because really and truly, at the time of its building, nobody should have had the ability to build it. Therein lies your problem. Jaden, welcome. Good to see you. Much thanks for all the likes that are popping on in. I appreciate greatly. So, a trilithon or a trilith basically is three stones made into like an arch. That's what it is. Usually they're fairly small because building them's hard. These ones are anything but. So the Baalbek trilithon stones in Lebanon, which, yes, it's not here, but we were specifically asked to talk about it because it does connect up to archaeology and structures, and I did promise I would, and I was waiting for Endless Thoughts to be on so we could bring a talk to it. Their biggest problem is how on earth do you cut something that big and place it? Because it's honestly the kind of thing that if you tried to do it today, it would be a very sucky and expensive exercise. So to do it when basically you've got a couple of strips of leather and a wooden pole as your entirety of your tool set, you're asking a lot of your prehistoric boyki. Thank you so much for the likes there, Lillian. So we have a lot of questions. Now, they may have served as a symbol of power and religious significance. Well, if you're trying to prove you're powerful, the ability to say, I can cause 1,000-ton blocks to be lifted up, yep, that'd do it. Let's be fair. But there are thousands of unanswered questions that are a problem. Now, in case you are wondering, they are thought to be worked by the Romans, as originally Baalbek, as it is today, originally was known as Heliopolis in Lebanon, where the Romans had conquered, and they built it. We're not sure how they built it. They know that it was the temple of what was called the god Jupiter Baal, which in their Greek phase they called the Heliopolitan Zeus. Their massive size makes moving them a problem. The quarry is nearby. We know where it is. They suspect because the quarry was higher than where the temple complex is, they could have rolled the stones on logs into place. But I'm going to throw a thought there, okay? 1,000 tons, you get that moving. How do you stop it moving? You want it to fall in exactly the right position to land on your uprights, having got the uprights in the first place, just saying. How the hell do you stop 1,000 tons? I mean, you're going to scorch your sandals trying to put the brakes on that one. Let's be fair. So you can see why I'm not saying I'm skeptic, but I'm skeptic. They are probably the largest known stones ever quarried in human history. And while the average is between 800 and 1,000 tons, there are three others, one which is the small one, 1,000 tons, the middle one, the stone of the south, 1,242 tons, and the forgotten stone, 1,650 tons. Just saying. you're going to move that? Jaden, we're talking about archaeology and architecture, mostly in North America, where we've taken a brief side trip into Trilithon stones, the biggest ones in the world, which nobody knows how the hell they were set up, because really there was no way to do it. Now, obviously, archaeologists have come up with some really cunning explanations of using wooden logs to roll them. Yeah, 1,000 tons, scrunch. Um, that is true. Rocks do last a long time, but nevertheless, things would, even if they did rot away and get lost in all of that, there would be evidence of it, I think. I suppose it depends when they, but these we know were built by the Romans, which wasn't that long ago historically. In that regard, we just still don't really know. I mean, they were good builders, they were 100%, absolutely with you on that. But come on, 1,000 tons. Huge thanks there to Jared for the roses. I do appreciate. Um, no, that we do know. The Romans did. Iron tools, yes. They had got iron tools, they had iron weaponry and iron armor, and maybe a version of steel as well, possibly. Now, the Romans were pretty advanced. Once the Romans became Rome, as we know Rome, and started really expanding out and conquering other places, yes, they were that advanced. Um, but still, it's the kind of level of work that would have been fairly astounding. Um, and there have been all kinds of examinations on these things to try and find more. Um, we know that there is another one that they were building but never set up, which was going to be possibly for the Jupiter temple. And they reckon that, again, 1,000 tons. So it just basically tells you that you're talking about such humongous rocks that it's very, very difficult to figure how they got around doing it. Now, the forgotten stone was never taken out of the quarry. It was still there. They'd cut it but not moved it. We're not sure why. We know that it's 6 meters wide, around about 6 meters high, well, 5 and a bit, and about 19.6 meters long. Yes, um, cutting could be a lot easier than moving, I think. You basically use fire to heat the rock in certain places, and once it gets really hot, you pour cold water on it and it cracks it where you want it cracked. So the majority of the rock is done by heat cracking, and then you just have to dress it a little bit. Oh, yes. As they developed, they would have gone through the whole system. But by the time the Romans became what we know of as the Romans, they were well into the Iron Age. That was partly why they conquered a heck of a lot of people, because they were ahead of the game. So the use of water pressure to break stone would have been known to them. So architecturally, they were very good. But still, moving 1,000 tons, not easy in any manner or form. Let's be fair. That's a bit of a tough one. So there is that. But nevertheless, an interesting story, if an inconclusive um, one in that regard. Um, we also know, sorry, I'm just rearranging my notes. So that's what a trilithon is, and it's the moving around of stones that are the problem. It becomes very, very difficult unless you've got serious cranes. And as I say, you start 1,000 tons rolling, even if you can get it moving, stopping it moving, good luck, sunshine. But let's move on to White Sands National Park in New Mexico. And what we have found in White Sands. Oh, no, it's not that old. That's part of the interesting thing. Trilithon stones are fairly recent. Yes, around 2,000 years ago. They would have been putting up Heliopolis around about the time when they conquered the Middle East. So, yes, while they were busy running around um, dealing with the biblical stories, they were running around Lebanon. So, absolutely, yes, about 2,000 years. And yes, they would have had a fair number of things like cranes and what have you, because they were the Romans and they were very good. But not for listing 1,000 tons. That would be a challenge today, just in terms of that. So still, even though more recent, no less inexplicable. Now, talking about White Sands, what have we got in White Sands? Now, as you know, Clovis people arrived in the Americas around 13,000 years ago. Well, between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, somebody with human feet left human footprints running around inside the park. Now, there was some argument if they were that old. So they did a second test which said maybe they were only 15,000. But then in 2023, a third study was done which said, no, we were right the first time. Better technology proves it. And it's all down to bad dating techniques, which sometimes are still used, which are a bit in argument. So footprints showing that human beings were running around the Americas. I'm looking at it using Google Street View. That's a good way to look at it. That's rather brilliant. Which bit, the trilithons or the feet? In which case it will be Google Feet View. Yes, I do make awful jokes, and I'm sorry. Forgive. So knowing when people arrived in a place is quite important in terms of archaeology because it tells us how developed they were when they arrived and how fast things did develop, which is not necessarily that fast. And it's quite important in that regard. We do need to know these things. So when you find out that people have to add an extra 10,000 years onto it, it changes your views quite a lot. Now, the next interesting place is Poverty Point. It is a huge earth mound and a concentric half circle shaped by hand without domestic animals centuries before the invention of the wheel, though at this point I'm starting to debate even that. The oldest, the Lower Jackson Mound, has been dated around 3,500 years BC. So we're talking around 5,500 years old. Fair enough. Archaeological studies suggest it was an ancient residential, trade, and ceremonial center, but researchers are not sure. Why would there be this sophisticated earthwork complex? Um, it was understood that Poverty Point was abandoned sometime around 1000 BC, and that another indigenous group moved in for a brief period only around 700 AD. It was clearly quite a serious center, but for who? And were there people that stayed there? We don't know. It makes it very confusing because it essentially shows that the understood narrative of history isn't right. And that's a problem. The next interesting thing is the Great Serpent Mound. The Great Serpent Mound is found in Ohio. Ohio. Basically, it's a mound built up and designed to be in the shape of a great big serpent. It's over 1,300 feet long, that's 396 meters long, and up to 6 to 7 meters wide. It protrudes from a grassy ridge by up to 3 feet or a meter, making it the world's largest serpent effigy. It winds across the plateau in its snake-like shape, and it is believed to have been constructed by indigenous Ohioans. Well, who else would have constructed it? But archaeologists haven't been able to specify what culture or date or why it was constructed. Estimates vary from 321 BC to 1070 AD. There are also 3 burial mounds nearby, 2 created by the Adena culture from 800 BC and 100 AD, and 1 by the Fort Ancient culture, somewhere between 1000 to 1650 AD. But neither of these were the ones that actually built the mound. So people were there around it, and apparently maybe even made use of it or knew of it. And then it was entirely forgotten until we had enough aeroplanes to actually see the damn thing. But again, it leads you to question, why build things that nobody can look at? What is the point? What is your aim? There must be a reason, and it is quite frustrating not knowing what that reason is. But there you have it. Next up, because again, we must have ups. We have the Hagud petroglyph site in Pickens, South Carolina. Now, a petroglyph, I remind you, is a picture carved into stone. For hundreds, maybe thousands of years, the Hagud Creek petroglyphs lay hidden beneath a dirt road. And in 2003, somebody decided, oh, we better excavate out this road and clear it up, probably to make a new one. And to their vast astonishment, they were like, yeah, boss, who's been drawing pictures? And these pictures are between 1,000 and 2,000 years old. And the 32 distinct petroglyphs show 18 human and several abstract images. Experts have been trying to pinpoint a specific era or decipher exactly what the carvings were trying to communicate. All we know is that they're there and you can look at them. And yes, indeed, they are very distinct people, which I'm not going to put pictures up, as these people are differentiated, male and female, in a manner that leaves very little to dispute, shall we say. You know which ones are the men, and it's pretty obvious which ones are the women. What the other structure things are, I couldn't tell you. They are certainly very interesting and educational, if you know what I mean. That said, let us move on to the next as we are progressing. I just want to quickly check. E, e, e. Just quickly. Go, go, go. Okay, sorted that. Moving along, we are now going to talk about the Grave Creek Stone in Moundsville, West Virginia. Is 75 feet tall? Yes. 3 feet to a meter, which means you're looking at around 30 meters high, which is pretty big. The Temple of Jupiter, yeah. But now do remember, Jupiter, or as he was in his Grecophone version, Zeus, was the principal god of the Romans. So he was absolutely important, and when they wanted important, Romans did go for the big. That is, oh, thank you so much. You're a star. I have kind people that look after me. You'll be amazed at how dry you can get talking. So yes, Jupiter was a very, very important god as the principal god. So 75 feet is a good size for a temple for somebody that important. And yes, they were going to use the remaining I was going to say trilobites, but that's a insect. Standing stones on the Temple of Jupiter, but for some reason didn't in the end. So they would have shifted another 3,000-ton stones. Yeah, big. So during the 19th century, excavations of Grave Creek Mound, a burial mound built between 250 and 150 BC, so over 2,100 years old at the very least, they found a little sandstone disc, which they called the Grave Creek Stone. Some think it might have been a joke, but the translations have suggested that this is actually written in Iberian Punic script, which is Old European, maybe Libyan, depending on which way the stone is turned. It's very hard to try to describe what it is, and even more so to try to translate it. Either way, you're talking about a people that came right across. And the problem with that is, how the hell did they get from Iberia which is essentially an area around Spain, or Libya, if it's Libya, which is not that far from Spain, right across to America, because that's really hard to explain. And the real truth is, we absolutely don't know. And that's a problem, because we want to know, and there are no answers. Now, yes, here is the thing. If you were to say big boats, you would in fact be giving the most logical and decent answer. However, normal archaeology of today says that they didn't have any kind of technology like that at all. And the point is, we're proving them pretty much entirely wrong. Clearly, history is older and more advanced than anybody thinks, which is kind of the point of this whole topic, finding that out. So you are entirely correct, and that's the problem, at least from the point of view of the scientists. Corazon, boa tarde. So, as we progress, Horseshoe Canyon Rock Art in Canyonlands National Park, Utah. Now, I got to admit, Utah is one place I really do want to visit. Out of all the places around the world, that's one of them. And almost entirely because I want to go and see the Narrows. And among the Narrows is Horseshoe Canyon, which has some of the most beautifully preserved life-size figures, which for some reason don't have limbs, we don't know why, forming some of the most significant rock markings in North America. Now, while they're characteristics of the Barrier Canyon style, which came from around 2000 BC, their exact dates remain unknown. So they could be anywhere from 4,000 years old to maybe 1,000 years old at a guess. But we don't know. The age of the rock art remains quite subject to debate. What's really interesting is we don't know who actually drew them, why they drew them without arms and legs, and what the significance of these things actually are. We just don't know. It makes it kind of interesting. Yes. Uh, or, or if we want to go conspiracy, hidden. If Rome was strong, okay, now I'm going to give you the answer to that in a very, very brief way. So Endersort says, if Rome was so strong, how did it fall? And the answer actually is fascinating because it's applicable to a number of modern great civilizations, including America. And if you want the long answer, you need to read two books. Okay, they are thick, they are dry, they are very difficult reads, but they're fascinating. They are both by the same author, Jared Diamond. The first one is called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and they're essentially how civilizations become great. Okay, that's the first book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. The second book is called Collapse, and it explains how great civilizations fall. So essentially, what it is that a civilization goes in like a sine wave. It goes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until it reaches a point. And at that point, it's kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and the rot sets in. Um, they become less interested in national pride and strength and all the rest, and more interested in personal gratification and my rights are more important than your rights. I'm not saying you haven't heard that before, and so on. And essentially, the entire civilization collapses on itself. So no, Rome did not fail because of illness. Not at all. It fell because of its own society collapsing. It went too far into the indulgent. And then the strengths that made it great were eroded away by the indulgences, and there was nothing left holding it up, and it collapsed and became easy prey for other civilizations that dominated it. That's really what happened. And arguably, that is exactly what happened with Great Britain, what happened with quite a few cultures, actually, and even Egypt in the end. It wasn't the strength of others that defeated it, it was that its own strength failed and it collapsed. And same with the Greek Empire as well. And they say, well, Jared Diamond says that it's inevitable it will happen to America, that it will happen to um, Russia. Population collapse through low birth rate. Uh, uh, no. It's sociological factors. When a country gets that strong, or a civilization gets that strong, what destroys it is itself, um, through varying means. And I really do believe Jared Diamond is correct. And the only way to avoid something like that is you need to keep reestablishing the things that strengthen your civilization. You've got to have a reason to keep strong, which is in part why if you build your empire on conquering others, which the Romans did, eventually there isn't really anyone else left to conquer, and you start going into other extravagances, which will kill you. And it did the Romans. Absolutely. It will eventually, I think, be, amongst other things, a major cause of the collapse of Western civilization. Not immediately, but eventually, because that's how that kind of thing goes. But yeah, Guns, Germs, and Steel and Collapse, both by Jared Diamond. He explains it in detail, and it's a fascinating read, whether you agree or not. Definitely worth going. So here's something which was found entirely by mistake. A very strange thing that isn't where you think it should be. Now, Stonehenge, we know about. It is arguable that it would contribute, But the trouble is with that as an argument, in general, when you have a major population decrease due to something like plague or war, it makes the survivors stronger, not just in terms of physicality, but in terms of their morale, their will to come back, and things like that. So, if anything, that would actually strengthen a civilization, unless really and truly they were wiped out down to a level that there was just so few that you couldn't reestablish a civilization, um, which you can't really do in that way. It's very, very difficult to do something like that. Usually, adversity, unless it's a total wipeout, and then there is no civilization. No. And Rome still stands insofar as it does. Um, the Italian people are still there. Britain is still there. So, no, I would argue against illness being a reason for a civilization to collapse. It's a very different thing in that sense. But social collapse is far more powerful when it comes to civilization collapse. The only other way to take out a civilization, really, is you absolutely have to analyze the whole lot. I mean, not just villages, but I mean absolutely down to the last few until there's nothing left. And that is, in fact, something that was done in history. We know that one of the things that used to be done by armies, and as awful and disgusting as it is, they would go through, and once they had wiped out all the men, they would wipe out all the children and make sure that all the women got pregnant with the conquering nation's kids, so that anybody left alive would in fact be the conquerors. It was a way of total genocide. That was the point of it. But it would have to be total, because every time in history that most or even almost all of a civilization gets taken down by something negative like that, they come back harder. They gain moral strength, and they rebuild, and they remember. And yes, herd immunity does play a part in it, but it's social collapse that destroys a civilization, because people lose the will to keep it going, and that's the critical difference. Now, in the heart of Miami, in a place that ironically is a traffic circle, is a stone circle. It's a pre-Columbian stone circle. Discovered in 1998, the Miami Circle has 24 large holes, forming a circle 40 feet or 12 meters in diameter. Within this are hundreds of smaller rectangular holes. Now, they may have served as post holes for a wall or a circular structure, but there's no solid evidence. The site is about 1,700 to 2,000 years old, and it is now in a protective park. But it's a something, and people aren't really sure what it was meant to be or why it was made. But it was, again, I would argue with you again on that one, and I will tell you why. While leaders think they are important, and that they keep civilization stable. In fact, I believe it's the common man that keeps civilization stable. The ones that actually do the job of stabilizing. Great leaders generally, while they're important, they don't keep civilization stable. That's not really the function in a way. So I would argue that, but then again, I will freely admit that there's a certain possibility I'm biased, simply because I find political leadership to all be corrupt. And let's face it, it's not like I don't have reason to believe that in that regard. Just saying. Now, whoever is throwing up all of those hearts, you're an absolute amazing person. We have literally just reached 10K hearts, which is pretty impressive. I am amazed. So huge, huge thanks for that. That is impressive. And another very great kindness, which has made us reach our goal. Wow. Huge, huge, huge thanks. Live goal is reached. Hearts have gone to 11K. You guys are amazing. I am truly blessed to have followers like you. Thank you so, so much for that. The next interesting thing is the Hemet Maze Stone from Reinhardt Canyon. And again, interconnected shapes in a pattern of mazes. Interesting. Used in American and Asian, interestingly enough, art for millennia. But nobody knows who made these damn drawings. The petroglyph has been attributed to Chinese Buddhist monks and shipwrecked sailors and more. But the prevailing theory suggests it was indigenous Californian artists, as it's similar to the Rancho Bernardo style found in other rock art in Southern California. All we can say is somebody was running around doing graffiti in America about 10,000 years ago, and we really don't know who the heck they were. Now, as we troll along, we are going to jump briefly away from that and that and that and that and that and that, and even that for now. And we are going to talk about something weird. Now, we've done witches. We've done civilizations, partly. We've done curses, ancient religions. Well, the next interesting bit that we do want to talk about is the bighorn medicine wheel. Now, what is the bighorn medicine wheel? Well, the bighorn medicine wheel is in northern Wyoming's Bighorn National Forest. It is, again, a stone circle, usually covered in snow during winter, but when it's not covered in snow, shows limestone rocks laid out in a wheel shape. It is a circle with spokes from the center. They reckon it dates to about 1760 AD and forms part of a chain of Native American archaeological sites that are up to 7,000 years old. And it was thought that this was used to predict astronomical events like the solstice, but nobody really knows for sure. But it does show, amongst other things, that whatever else we can say about the archaeology of America, we have to absolutely admit that there are all kinds of strangenesses. Okay, so what do we choose to stabilize civilization? I would like to say democracy. I suspect it's not true. I would never say communism because human nature rebels. Similar socialism. A dictatorship is only stable insofar as it is stagnant, so it doesn't count as stable. A theocracy is an awful way to keep stabilization, and I'm heartily against it. If anything, while it is the least kind, I would say the most stable civilization is in fact capitalism because it works. It's not kind, and it has a certain amount of attrition on the poorer people. But as a greater whole, if you're talking the civilization as an organism and don't care too much for the individual, it does work and is stable. The problem behind it is that you have to be a little heartless, and it's not that kind to the individual, if that makes sense. So, it makes it difficult to really comment. The kindest answer would be that if it was a theocracy led by a decent God and the people were truly faithful, it would work. The problem is that humans get involved. Me and Hannah are both watching your live. I'm very glad for that, Jared. That is really awesome. I do enjoy people that sit and watch. Do throw in a comment now and then because that's always good. But absolutely. And in case you're wondering, Endless Thoughts and I occasionally wander off on these arguments as to what will work. Not because we really disagree with each other, but because we both would really enjoy finding an answer. Now, dictatorships are stable, but they are stagnant because you don't get innovation under a dictatorship. And innovation makes a community strong. Democracy is nice as long as people remain civil. We are seeing the failure of democracy at the moment in America, where the radicals among them, whoever they are, and I'm not saying who is who, are using violence to get their way. And that's where democracy starts falling apart. Ogliarchy, yes, if you had no corruption, but where you have human beings, you get corruption. You know the old saying where they say, two people can keep a secret if one of them's dead. And I say that a great government can lead a country as long as none of them have corruption. Show me a government that doesn't have corruption. Right there, you got a problem. Socialism never works because, again, It results, I've got commentary from the peanut gallery, it results in stagnation because there isn't incentive. Same with communism. You've got to give me a reason to work hard. If I work really, really hard and get 10 Rand a day, and Bob does nothing, gets 10 Rand a day, I'm going to sit on my bum too. Nobody wants to work in socialism because there's nothing to make me want to. So capitalism, despite its inherent unkindness, is still the most stable and strongest form of civilization. But as I say, you just have to not care about the individual. And therein lies the problem. Democracy with capitalism? Yes. Yes. To a certain level. If you can have the two hand in hand, so capitalism, but held in check a certain amount by democracy and allowing a certain level of care for the little person, yes. I remember when discussing political philosophical science, we came to the understanding that every country, no matter what you do, will have rich people and poor people. But you can gauge the success of the civilization by how poor the majority poor are. There will always be a few that are just like right on the fringe of society. There's nothing you can do about it. But if 90% of what we consider are the poor people are at least able to make a living wage and manage, then you're doing all right because you've covered the basics. There will always be somebody richer than you because, I mean, show me a single government where the top ones don't have riches. It doesn't exist. 1984, George Orwell, it proves that. So are we describing countries here or making a... Sorry, no, that was rude of me, wasn't it? I do apologize. Um, Jared, uh, get some coffee, make some for me. Enjoy your coffee. Have a fantastic... We're not going to go on too much longer. It was awesome having you with us. Always appreciate it. Have a fantastic, fantastic evening. Endless Thoughts, you've basically described quite a lot of countries right there. And that is why democracy fails in most places. And weirdly enough, it isn't the poor countries that are uneducated or intellectually disabled necessarily. Ah, my dear, you make me laugh. Yes. Unfortunately, you have a point. Ah, good Lord. That has to be the funniest. Oh, God. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yes, politics is a problem. What mysterious things are out there? Well, certainly politics. Uh, I have come to the understanding that what is going to destroy the modern world is politics. Because politics originally was meant to be the leadership of countries. And no, we don't need a new system. We need to change the old system into what it was in the beginning. Now, what do I mean by that? The problem is we've allowed so much corruption that the importance of politics in the modern day and age is that it is there in order to do I don't know what. It isn't about running the country or looking after your own people properly, which is what it was. And yes, you're absolutely correct in that. The advent of AI and robots and all of that, it does have a problem, quite a serious one. So you're utterly correct. But the biggest problem is really the fact that politicians have forgotten what it's meant to be. In order to do politics, I'm supposed to put my people first, look after them, look after the country, and do what is best for the growth of the country, and to do so with honor. Nowadays, we literally have politicians that when you say, look, we've just found that you stole 14 billion, here's evidence, they go, ha ha, you got me, and carry on being a politician. No, that alone, in and of itself, should be grounds of practically execution for treason. And in the past it was. There is no pride. Thank you very much for that. Yes, everybody, listen to her, she's right. Join the fan club. It matters. But yeah, and nowadays, politicians have no shame. It's all about slander and one-upmanship and who's the best and the fanciest. It's got nothing to do with running the country. And that is the problem. Right there. And clearly you're in a happy mood tonight, since you're spoiling me so much with the hearts and the go populars. And I mean, we've reached our live goal, and good God, I've got 25K hearts right there. That's pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie. I am impressed. But yes, you are correct. The issue, which again, if you read Collapse by Jared Diamond, you will see it's the social viewpoints. And you're seeing it now with events that are happening where people are using political or social tragedies as political tools. Um, and in many ways, it shows not the importance of the event. Okay, so full disclaimer for everybody, what I'm about to say is going to sound cruel. I'm not saying it to be cruel. Hear me out. Are any deaths going on in Gaza a tragedy? Yes, they are. Was the death of Charlie Kirk in America a tragedy? Yes, it was, because all deaths and murders and wars are a tragedy. Okay, so absolutely they are bad. However, if you look at the way that it's appearing on social media, people are using them as weapons for arguments, not actually caring about doing anything about them. They're saying, oh, you see, you care more about the death of Charlie Kirk than you do about the deaths in Gaza because you're evil. Things like that show that the people are not interested in the event or in the tragedy. They're using it as a weapon to prove their point. And that shows not the importance of the events, but the moral degradation of the arguers. No loss of life should ever be celebrated. That's the point. And the moment you celebrate it for any reason, you have become the evil we need to avoid. That's the point. Now, remember my comment where I said that it's not the leaders that makes a country stable, but the community itself. And the problem is, in many cases, as we see here, the moral fiber of the community is disappearing. And if they no longer uphold what makes the country great, the country stops being great. There's our problem. Now, I will add to that. While I believe a theocracy is the worst form of government you can get, for a lot of reasons, okay, nevertheless, I will say that having a government that is well informed by good religion and is supported but not dictated to by good religion, there you have a strong government because it has a strong morality informed by good religion. But religion must never be in power. That's different. Okay, so having a strong moral structure and a strong religious structure is a very, very good thing. And I don't care which God you choose or how. The point is, if it has a good morality, it forms a strong basis in the common person who is the strength of the civilization. And that matters. And it can take you through any disaster, any tragedy, any war, because it gives you that strength which makes it worthwhile. The problem is when you think that instead of informing your morality, it should dictate your law, because that's a totally different thing. Then a theocracy becomes a dictatorship, and it fails. And I've just answered you. Religion should inform, never control. The moment you make religion your power, it becomes a dictatorship. And that is very, very, very bad. You see, if I am informed by the good values and live under the law of the good values, I can still make room to accept that you might be different. I might say that in my country, this is how we live and what we do, but I can appreciate that you believe different as long as you obey the law. The moment the religion becomes the law, the fact that you are different makes you automatically not just a sinner, but a criminal, and therefore you should be removed. And therein lies the problem. That's why a theocracy fails. And we've seen it time and again in multiple major religions where people are slaughtered for not believing. It is the conclusion we arrived when we studied witches that very literally what we call a witch is anybody that isn't of and approved of religion. And therefore they're evil, going to hell, must die, etc., 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 which is all based out of a narrow religious viewpoint. Because at the time of the Great Witch Trials, who was in charge? The church. Which immediately goes to show that religions should never run the country, ever. It leads to a dictatorship that is worse than a normal dictatorship because it is morally justified dictatorship. And that's evil. Not just bad. I mean, plenty of dictators will admit that people think they're wrong, but I'm in charge. What are you going to do? I got the army. At least they're honest. Not nice, but honest. Must we perpetrate a lie as well? No, a theocracy cannot work. Um, but good moral teaching and uh, a, a firm law dictated by a good moral code, but with a decent legal system is very, very different. The biggest problem with the modern legal system is that it's about the law, not justice. "100% correct. Socialism doesn't work because that's exactly what's happened, because it doesn't take into account basic human nature. A, I need to strive, because when I don't strive, I become sedentary. And B, I must see just reward for my striving. And socialism has neither. And yet they sit and watch while the majority eat grass and the leaders have it all. That's exactly the point. It doesn't support human nature. And there's nothing you can do about that, sadly. So in terms of politics, you are correct. Capitalism informed by democracy would be the best system if you can get it set in and make it work right. And every now and then make damn sure that there are no corruptions. So you must have an informed morality, and you must have a justice-based legal system, not a law-based legal system. And that's hard to do, I'm afraid. But if you can come up with a good answer, I'd love to hear it. We've been trying to do it for thousands and thousands of years and have failed so far. Oh, absolutely. I know some people that have come from Korea and who have family in North Korea, and the stories that I've heard from them, absolutely, it will make your hair curl. There's no doubt about it. It's not a good thing at all in that regard. So, if you're going to work along that, then there is no doubt in my mind um, communism and socialism cannot work because it is contrary to human nature, really, I think. You know, somebody once jokingly pointed out it's called the human race because we need a finish line. Placeholder, thank you for being on with us. You're a star, sir. I wish you the best of sleep. I think actually we are getting rather late. I will not deny. So we are probably not going to go on too much longer. But this is such an interesting conversation. But yes, have a fantastic evening. Bless you, certainly. And we will see you in the next one. Now, an interesting story that I strongly do believe is somewhat apocryphal is the idea of true Ubuntu, where people automatically share because it's good. And there's that story of the kiddies that when they were offered a prize, that the first one over the finish line could have this giant basket of fruit, but everyone else wouldn't get anything. And they all held hands and ran together and crossed the finish line together and then sat round and shared the fruit, which proves that how can you enjoy if you are the only winner? Now, I find It's a lovely story. It really is. But it is somewhat apocryphal because human beings aren't like that. And there's always somebody that will get left out because we are community, but that one isn't community for reasons. And therein where you start to see the collapse. So the theory is always good. Well, by and large, we've tried so many things over the centuries. I mean, okay, I will tell you a rather sad reality. I lived in community when I was a friar in the church. Now, we're talking about a community of people dedicated to brotherhood under the service of God that you're supposed to set your entire life by. Um, you would think if anything worked, it would be that. And let me tell you, people stole things, people did stuff to be spiteful, people kept for themselves, took more than their share all the time. Why? Because people are people. And, you would think in a community dedicated to the service of God and each other, you wouldn't have that, and you do even there. So, sorry. Humanity requires a goal, and that's why, as long as you can keep the poorest as livable, that is the best you can achieve. Um, you might have a point. What will happen if robots take over? I suspect uh, a logictocracy, a system that works entirely by logic, like a computer, might be truly terrifying, or the start of heaven, but very unlikely anything in between. Think about that. And maybe I will have an answer for you tomorrow. And maybe you will have an answer for me. But yes, one thing we haven't tried is a logitocracy. Try it out, and we'll chat about it in tomorrow's live, because it are getting very late. And I don't know for sure if we could solve the entire world's problem tonight. But I will say, it's a hell of a thought, isn't it? I mean, right there, it's a hell of a thought. I don't know. It's almost terrifying to think. Do that, because it's certainly very, very interesting. I don't know. I don't know. What could work? I need to reread 1984 and Animal Farm. Maybe I can come up with an answer there. Maybe. But until then, I shall bid you have an absolutely wonderful evening. Bless you entirely. May you sleep wonderfully, sleep deep, sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open, and keep that holy object near at hand, and maybe a baseball bat as well, just in case, because you never know. Those things that go bump in the night might very, very well go bump for you. Good night, Crystal. Good night, everybody, and have a truly wonderful evening.